Hi, welcome to Bear Mountain. Today's vlog entry is kind of a walkabout, and what we're doing is we're in our greenhouse today, and we have been a little busy starting on 2017. It's not a whole lot of things, but these are some of the first things that will be going in. A couple days ago we were bumping up our winter stock, which we'll see when we go to the propagation house, and today we just finished up with the first round of sweet peas. Getting these guys planted into 1.5 inch blocks. We use Elliott Coleman standard mix to make these guys. The one thing that we do is we kind of back off a little bit on the nitrogen. These guys, the legumes, are natural nitrogen fixators anyway, and it can somewhat inhibit germination a little bit. So we have our first round's about 400 or 500 sweet peas, which is good for a 100-foot row, a little bit more, and then we're going to do another round a little bit larger out in the field. And our idea behind this is these guys in the hoop house are going to be first for us, so they'll start probably, if we should be able to get these in the ground about New Year's Day, and hopefully we'll have some of our first harvests in late April, early May. The guys will go in the hoop house. We'll harvest on those until about the end of June. And then at that time too, we'll be starting to pick on the stuff out in the field, which will carry us through most of July. So our idea behind this is that we get kind of a succession, out in the field being cooler and a little bit later. So we'll plant the ones in the field, just as a mental note. They'll probably go in right around the first of spring. After these guys germinate, which is be about 5 to 7 days, we'll take them down to our propagation house, and we'll put a little blood meal over the top for nitrogen fertilizer. That'll just kind of help them during the low light period. We use blood meal because it doesn't really take a biologic process like a cottonseed meal or feather meal does to get a nitrogen available to a plant. And even though these are fixators, being at the young stage and still on the block, they'll need just a little bit of boost before we put them in the ground. And it's not really complicated. It's just we mix the blood meal with a little worm castings, and we just sprinkle over the top of the block and water it in with a light mist over the top. One key important thing about sweet peas, and we'll talk a lot about that later once we plant, is you do have to pinch these guys. So when they get to the third true leaf, that's when you take the center out. That way you're going to get good laterals, and that's where most of the blooms come from. Okay, on the other side over here, we've got our first round of poppies. Now these are also going to go in a tunnel. We have a few that we started a little earlier to see if we could get an earlier harvest off of them, but these guys, our germination on poppies has always been a little bit on the sparse side. That's why we use the mini blocks. But it looks like we get about 60 to 65% germination of what you say would be good potable plants. And these guys are really close to being bumped up into 2-inch blocks. We'll probably be doing that Thanksgiving week. And then we'll move these guys onto the propagation house to grow on too. They'll go in the tunnel right around the first of the year, maybe a little later, maybe closer to mid to late January. This time of year, growing is a little bit slower, and we use an unheated propagation house for growing things on, so it takes a little longer, but they should be blooming for us. What we hope for is in late April and May, and they're beautiful blooms. These poppies are nice big heads. We have a salmon rose, we have a pure white, and we have a pastel mix. So these are going to be all great for any kind of designs you're working on for spring. It'll really complement a lot of other colors. So let's go down to the propagation house and see what's growing on down there, and we'll catch up when we get down there. Hi, now we're in the propagation house. These Snapdragons are ready for planting. We're just in the process of cleaning out our slow shift from this last summer, and we're going to be planting these Snapdragons in that row. These are our winter Snapdragons. You can see they're robust. We have tangerine trumpet, and we've got chantillies, and what else colors do we have in here? We've got lots of great colors. Baltimore rose, which is a beautiful rose color. And then chantilly, we have in individual colors this year. So we have some bronze and we have white. And I think there's a salmon in here too. And so we've got a lot of great colors. Most of our Snapdragons that we raise are open face, with the exception of the Baltimore Rose. And the reason we do is they have an actual a lot better ability to keep the floret on the stem itself. They're more vigorous in the vase, and they get really nice heads on them too, especially in the tunnel. So we've got about 700 or so plants here that are going to be going in. These are all in 2-inch blocks, and they were planted right around Labor Day, and they're ready to go. This was an experiment to see if we could get some of our poppies in started earlier. We did really good on raising a couple of weeds in the back of that tray, but most of these guys are in 2-inch blocks. These are the Colibri, Bianco, and I think we got a little pastel in here too. And so we've got a little spot in the back of one of our hoop houses that we're going to try these guys out and see if we can get earlier blooms. These were sown, believe it or not, about August 10th. So takes a little bit, but they're really at a point where the size is good. Need a little more nitrogen fertilizer, but they're doing okay. Over here on this side, this we just bumped up yesterday, and they look like, they've been, slapped around. Although they look that way, in a couple of days they'll be standing up straight. And
what is it?
What is it? It's stock. Says my director. You should be talking about what it is. It's stock, and we have white, and we have 2 versions of white, and Cheerful Series and Kineto Series. And the Cheerful Series is really good because it's about 95% doubles, and you don't have to worry about trying to select out with those guys. So we got the white and the yellow, which is kind of more of a cream. And what do we got here? We got about 800 stock. This is our first round. We're going to be doing multiple plantings of these guys, probably about 3 or 4 more successions. This is going to be a spring thing for us. Stock pretty much finishes for us once we get into June. We start getting hot weather, it's done. So what we're going to try to do is start some out in the tunnels, and then do a bunch under the low tunnels. So the first rotation goes in the high tunnels, the next rotations will go under low tunnels, and eventually when the weather's decent enough in April, the last planting will just be open field. And so these are really great. Love the fragrance of them. Nutmeg fragrance. It really smells cool. So let's go to our next spot, which is, we'll show you the tunnel we're working on to getting things cleaned up, and show you also too some of the ranunculus that our last round that has popped up. It was planted, let's see, today is the 11th, 12th, and so it was planted on the 28th of October, and I think you guys will be surprised at how vigorous it looks. So let's go down to our Hoop-de-Doo 1 and take a look. Hey, now we're in Hoop-de-Doo 1. We have 3 of these guys. This is a row that we started. They planted this ranunculus on the 28th of October, and you can see it's sprouted really well. Looks great. We're probably going to give it some foliar feed here shortly, a little bit of sea kelp, and just maybe a little bit of fish fertilizer as well, kind of mixed in with it. And they're looking really good. We got it. Varieties in this tunnel are really kind of more on the pink and pastel side, and we have a little white picotee to the front of it. And then we have a group here that was planted about 7-8 days later over here, and it's just now starting to germinate, and you can kind of see some of the smaller plants coming up. But these guys here will really pop this week, and it's been just really fantastic in terms of weather, temperature wise, so these guys are all going to get a really good start. And we have total on this row, I think it's around 650 plants total. Again, when we did the video earlier, and we'll point to it, we'll show you a link to our planting ranunculus. It'll be in the little eye up in the corner, and if you click on that, you can go to a link on some of our pre-sprout and other things we did on the whole process. But this just shows you what it looks like about 2 weeks after we stick them in the ground. And these guys started germinating in about 5 days. You can start to see the more aggressive guys coming up. So within a month, probably by early part of December, they'll be nice and bushy, about this tall, and really filled in nicely. So we're now ready to put the drip line irrigation back in, and to make sure that the lines line up with the 3 rows on the bed itself. So we want the emitters as close to the plants as possible, so when we start watering, we're watering the plants. And our drip tape, we use our drip tapes on 8-inch center, so it works out pretty good. Well, where we are is we're taking just a look at one of our beds that we planted for overwintering. This is our overwintering Sweet William. It's in the Dianthus family, and these are the guys that really put out big beefy heads in the spring. Come about May, they're really super old-time fragrance. And these guys were planted about a month ago, and just kind of wanted to show you how the plants have they've adapted. Some of them having a little tough time, but for the most part, we've had the wettest October, I think, in probably about 25 years. So considering how wet it's been, these guys are actually doing pretty good. And when you look down the row, you can see that it's filling in nicely, and it's keeping ahead of the slugs and the others that are trying to take nips at it here and there. But even though the plants may look a little beat around, they really, once they start growing again in the spring, which is around right around 1st of March, they'll really fill in. This whole row will be filled in with Dianthus. So we're going to have to go through and do a weeding here probably next time we get a good dry break, and that'll be the only one we'll have to do. And this was stale seed bedded and occultated, so actually, considering the amount of rain we had and how warm it's been, the weed pressure in here is really pretty light. So that's a positive. Anyway, I want to thank you guys today. We just did a quick walkabout, looked at some of the things going on, and if you have any questions or comments, be sure to post them. Also too, if you take a look up in the left-hand corner, you may see a little eye, or you may even see something that says, you know, maybe a next video of interest. Also too, if you feel like you want to give us some support in terms of helping us out with equipment and things of that nature to make these blogs, that'd be great. It's always appreciated. And I want to say thank you to people who have donated. It's been fantastic. Anyway, until we see next time, which we hope to do another video here shortly, we'll see you next time. Thank you.